A notable cooldown in the coldest era of fall so far has been impacting the central and eastern United States so far this week, but things are about to flip in the opposite direction as we go to the end of this week and the weekend, with warmer than average temperatures by as much as 15 to 25 degrees in those same areas. This video has all the details on that, plus any storms on the way. Without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the mid-level pattern, about 15 to 20,000 feet on up in the atmosphere, because I think it does a great job of showing us where the blues that indicate troughing and some general cooler air, and where the oranges and reds that indicate ridging in the jet stream and the warmer air being pulled up as a result will be as we go through the next several days. And as we go into, say, our Thursday, October 17th of 2024, skipping, just about a day and a half after I'm filming this video, you can see in the morning hours of our Thursday, we're going to have a pretty strong trough in the associated cold air. I've talked about it in the last couple of videos. It will be continuing here in some parts of the southeastern regions and the mid-Atlantic zones of the United States. Behind it, though, this is going to be that warm-up and the associated pattern flip that's really going to carry most of the country into the end of the week and the upcoming weekend. From the Central Plains moving all the way on up here into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, warmer than average air already beginning to take hold into the overnight hours on Wednesday night going into our Thursday, and this warmer than average air will only continue to build and expand as we go towards the end of this week. Look at what this model is indicating. Yes, this is just one solution, but being only a few days out from this, I think this is pretty likely going to happen in this way. From Minnesota and Iowa all the way over there to Maine, we've got some of the most anomalous ridging we've seen in quite a little while here, making its way to the north, and this will be associated with these warmer than average temperatures by as much as 15, 20, even 25 degrees making their way north. So you can really see the connection between what's going on up here in the atmosphere with ridging and troughs, and how that really affects what's going on down at the surface. Speaking of what happens down at the surface, notice that ridging continuing, so warmer than average air continuing to fill the east through this weekend and all the way towards next week. Ridging brings warm-ups, and warm-ups are appealing to areas of storminess that want to try and kind of slide up against them and spawn some storms kind of in between. We'll have to watch this little area moving out of the Rockies and towards the Central Plains as we go into the early part of next week. This is Monday, October 21st. The European model is certainly picking up on at least a signal. We could see some storms moving out into the plains. That's something I will discuss a little bit later in the video. You can use the timestamps in the description to get right to it. But before I proceed talking about the weather, I do want to remind you that the awesome weather model maps that I use are from Weatherbelt, and there is a free trial link to them right down below in the description to this video. Also, if you enjoyed this video overall and want more consistent, accurate, and educational forecasts in the future, I would really love, now that I'm right at 5,500 subscribers, for you to be the next one and carry me all the way towards 6,000 subscribers. If you like this kind of content, make sure you're subscribing and turning on those notifications. But here we go, taking a look at the jet stream that's expected later this week. This is exactly what we just looked at with the ridging, but with the jet stream layered onto the screen, you can see a little bit of a dip and some cooler in the west, but overall warmer air moving from south to north through the central United States as a result of that ridge in the jet stream, and the warmer than average air will only continue to move east. Let's go day by day and kind of see how that occurs. First of all, starting off with the near term, where we've still got a lot of cooler air as we go into our Wednesday, October 16th, from Texas and the Gulf Coast, where we're around 10 degrees below average, all the way on up here through the 20 degree below average areas of the Appalachians. Behind it, though, notice where we're going to begin to see the warm-up already getting going with that ridge in the jet stream out of Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado, all the way up there to Montana and the Dakotas, 15 to 20 degrees above average Wednesday. Going through our Thursday and moving over to our Friday here, that continues to move east at a pretty rapid rate. Nebraska, South Dakota into Minnesota and Wisconsin, already around 15 to 25 degrees above average by Friday. A lot of the northern U.S. at least 5 degrees above average. The cool down really diminishing there in the southeast U.S. from our previous trough. Meanwhile, on the other side of that ridge, we do have a little bit of troughiness in the west and some 10 to 20 degree below average temperatures as a result. Notice the correlation between ridges and troughs here. The ridge will just continue to expand over the north central U.S. into the Great Lakes and northeast as we go out of our Saturday and here into our Sunday, October 20th. I'm expecting 10, 15 to even 20 degree above average temperatures, not only in those same areas of the north central plains, but also expanding eastward. Even the southeast U.S. starting to warm up back up above average for this time of the year as we go to the end of this weekend and next week. So let's kind of see how those anomalies I just showed you play out with our actual temperatures that are forecasted from the National Digital Forecast Database for the next at least 4 to 5 days. Starting with our Wednesday, October 16th, that is tomorrow. I'm filming this on your Tuesday evening. As we go into our Wednesday here, we've got that near-term trough. It's going to continue to move east, and the plains are going to continue to warm back up quickly behind this. But for now, in the near term, the central plains up into the upper Midwest, a freeze or at least a pretty strong frost as we go into our Wednesday morning. Over to the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, a lot more frost and freeze conditions as temperatures sit right around 32 to 35. The same goes all the way on up here through the northern Appalachians and through a lot of the New England states. This will not be the coldest morning. The closer you go to the East Coast, Thursday morning and Friday morning will actually actually be a little bit colder there. Wednesday afternoon, only in the 50s across a lot of the Midwest. That will include Chicago, Illinois, near 56. Looking at plenty more 50s. In fact, 56 also expected in Indianapolis. Over here into Pennsylvania, 57-ish for a place like Philadelphia, maybe closer to 60 in some parts of the community there. Back to the west, though, this is that ridging that's going to continue to shift east as we go through the end of this week. For now, on Wednesday, it's mostly just out here in the mountain west where valley locations in Utah are around 80. We've got 80s pushing up in some valley locations of Wyoming into Montana and even the western Dakotas. Anywhere you see a box when I'm showing these daily high temperatures, those do indicate a forecasted record warm high, as in temperatures have never been that warm before since records have been kept for a peak temperature in the day. Now moving along into our Thursday here, you can see overall, I'm not going to circle anything, but I do want you to notice more of that chilly air moving further east. Notice we've got now 20s in parts of the northeast U.S., a lot more 30s and some frost and freeze conditions through the Ohio Valley, starting to warm back up into the 40s for morning lows in the Central Plains as that ridge progresses eastward out of the west and into the Central Plains. That's what the title and thumbnail of this video are about, so I want to circle it and make sure you're aware of these warming temperatures. This is not a big concern in terms of 70s and 80s filling up into the Central and Northern Plains. It's just a little bit of a shocker in terms of comparison to average for this time of the year. To see a lot of upper 60s going all the way up here towards the Canadian border by Thursday afternoon, plenty more 70s and even some low 80s into the Central Plains. You can see the belt that the ridge is affecting the most by the time we go into our Friday from Texas, where we've got mid and upper 50s in the western part of the state into the morning. All the way on up here to the Minnesota border with Canada, we are seeing 50s along that stretch. That will include parts of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where just a few mornings before this Friday morning, remember, we were in frost and freeze conditions. As this ridge continues to develop in the way I just drew, it reminds me of an omega block pattern, which you can look up. I'm not going to explain it in this video, but it's overall when you get a high pressure in the central United States. As that continues to develop, it forces those 30s further towards the East Coast, and eventually that cool down will be forgotten here in the eastern U.S. Friday afternoon, you can see that we're seeing more 70s expanding, a lot more areas of Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan starting to fill in with upper 60s and beginning to touch the 70s. If not Friday, then definitely into our Saturday. Back towards the west here, still dealing with mid and upper 70s, which feels nice, but, it's above average for this time of the year in parts of Nebraska and Kansas. Down here to Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, a lot more 70s, and the closer you go to the Gulf Coast, we could even get a few 80s in the mix. A very uniform, mild to warmish day across a lot of the country Friday. Flashing right by our Saturday morning lows there and going into our Saturday afternoon. Yet another warm day for a lot of the country. We've got mid and upper 70s in a place like Des Moines, Iowa. Same goes over here into a lot of central Missouri, back into Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. 70s even beginning to return into some of the areas that felt the longest effects in the eastern U.S. from our cool down. 70 degrees for a high in a lot of South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. Here we go into our Sunday morning. The last day and time that I kind of want to cover here is our Sunday morning, because you can even notice with the morning lows, they're starting to rebound really in full force behind our last cool down as that ridging that I've been covering throughout this video continues to move east out of Missouri over here into the Ohio and Tennessee Valley regions. Even these zones now starting to see plenty more 40s and warming morning lows as we go towards the start of next week. Now, turning things over to the precipitation side of things, it's very rare that I talk about precipitation last in my videos, but overall there's not too much going on across the country, as you can see here as we go into our Wednesday, October 16th, this model not picking up on much. So that's why this is the last thing we're discussing, but here we are. I do want to talk a little bit about what that sneaky storm could do as it makes its way out of the Mountain West and into the Central Plains, and you can begin to really see it develop in a pretty full force here for at least the Rockies and the Mountain West as we go into our Thursday, October 17th, around the evening time frame, out of Oregon and Idaho, into parts of Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, and into northern New Mexico. All these areas picking up on some valley rain and even some higher elevation snow. Once you get up into those highest peaks, you know where you are. That's when you start to see these blues pop up on the map, and some decent snowfall accumulation, even a foot plus in some isolated areas could get going there. Especially as this low takes its sweet time moving through the Mountain West into Utah and parts of western Colorado. We're going to see a couple of days of some valley rain and some mountain snow there. We'll have to watch for some of the flooding in the valleys. But overall, it's been pretty dry, so I'm not too worried about any sort of major flooding impacts out of this. This is not any sort of significant winter storm by any stretch of the imagination, but to a degree, it is a winter storm at least. Here we go, coming out of the Rockies and finally into the Central Plains by Monday, October 21st. Took long enough after being in the Rockies since around Thursday and into Friday. We see this storm emerge. This is that little blue trough that I showed you earlier on the European model. We're still looking at that model. Don't let anybody tell you that this little blip is going to be this huge problem across a lot of the United States. This is a very small and compact storm. I think parts of Nebraska, Kansas might get some showers and storms. based on this as we go towards Monday and Tuesday, but then this thing fizzles out. And the problem with it fizzling out is that we are in drought across a lot of the U.S. I talked about this in my last video, but I want to actually put a whole 2-minute segment here about this drought. Pretty much about 80% of the country is in a drought condition. As of the latest update from just a few days ago, we're looking at many of those areas in severe to extreme and exceptional drought conditions, and unfortunately, in a dry season like fall, you need above average precipitation to even get some decent drops of rain coming down to the ground. And we are looking at well below average conditions for precipitation being expected, even as we go to the 5 to 10 day range here from Texas through the Carolinas and Tennessee, all the way on up there to Maine. The only areas that may relieve some drought over there in the Dakotas, and even that amount of above average precipitation might not be enough to do too much. Let's take a look at what this looks like with some ensemble members, basically a collection of models being averaged out to kind of give one output. Notice here as we go out of this weekend and towards the early parts of next week, again, we see a decent amount of precipitation exiting the Rockies and moving into the Central Plains. That is some good news there. We'll get some drought relief in some areas if we need it there in western Nebraska, western Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, and western Texas in particular. Moving out of those regions, though, and into the Central Plains, notice, as I mentioned, this thing is a very compact low-pressure system. Once you lose those greens, you're really losing the confidence from these ensemble members. That's what this indicates, just having some very splotchy and light-shaded grays through the Dakotas and Minnesota back down here towards Kansas and Missouri. I really doubt, no matter where this storm is in the northern or central plains that I was just showing you a minute ago, as we go towards early next week, no matter where it is not going to be doing too much to bring drought conditions to an end there. And definitely not as it makes its way towards the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. And then look at the confidence. We don't have any confidence in any storms behind this one. Grays continuing indicate very low confidence from many members at all in any sort of precipitation in the central and eastern U.S. This could be a very concerning drought condition developing across the U.S., just continuing to build through the next couple of weeks. Something I'll definitely keep you updated on here in my consistent, accurate, and educational forecasts that I post right here on the channel. Based on how dry it is across a lot of the country right now, I'm probably not going to post my next video until around Friday as opposed to my every other day upload schedule like I've been having. But do not worry, I will be back around Friday or Saturday with the next update, especially if we start to see more developments and some longer range storms. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And yeah, my ramble ends here. Love y'all.
One nation weather.